Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to be taking these textures that you can see on the screen here and we'll be using those to add some interest to the building interiors that we've been making recently. And as you've probably guessed, like always, you can find a link to the PDF file for these down in the description. So let's get started. Okay, so for a lot of these pieces it's simply a matter of gluing them to a piece of thin cardboard. So that includes the shelves, the curtain, the wolf pelt, the frames, the shields and the shutters. However, the rugs are a little bit different and I like to scrunch the texture up first, just to make it nice and malleable. Then we can apply some glue to the back. And when sticking it to the cardboard, I kind of like to pinch or squash it together in a few places to simulate a few folds and creases. Basically, this kind of thing. And another piece that's slightly different is the map, and for this we'll just need to apply some glue to the back and then fold it in half. And the reason for this is that if we want to bend one or two of the corners over, we can do that and still have some of the parchment texture on the reverse side. Anyway, once those have had plenty of time to dry, we'll just need to cut all of these little bits and pieces to size. And there you go. Now, this next part is optional, but if you like, you can take this little front piece and glue that on top of the shelves, just to give them more of a three-dimensional appearance. It doesn't really show up much on camera, but I kinda like the effect. So yeah, that's most of the wall decorations done. Okay, now we'll just need to decide how we want to decorate the walls. However, you'll probably notice that if we just glue some of these pieces straight onto the wall, they'll look a little bit flat. So, for the curtains in particular, what I like to do is cut out a piece of thin corrugated cardboard that's a bit smaller than one of the curtains, and glue that to the back of the piece. And, of course, I'll do one for each side. So, here's one that I made earlier, and if I go ahead and apply plenty of glue to the back of these two little strips, when I glue the whole thing to the cottage wall, it ends up looking something like this. Now, if you like, you can do a similar thing with the shield, but maybe this time use some thin cardboard instead, as we don't really want these to be sticking out quite as far, so something like that. And then we'll just need to decide what other bits and pieces we're going to add to the wall. So there's not a lot to say about this part really. As you can see, it's all fairly straightforward stuff. But when we're done, we should end up with a wall section like this. So yeah, that should allow us to add some variety to the inside of our little cottages. Okay, now for the outside. So, if you want to add some shutters to the exterior, we can simply glue the closed ones into place over the top of one of the windows, like so. And we can do a similar thing with the open shutters, but if, like me, you want to make them slightly less two-dimensional, you can apply a tiny blob of hot glue to the back and glue them on at a slight angle, like you can see here. So I'll go ahead and do the same on the other side. And there you have it. That's how we can add some extra details to the outside walls as well. And now that that's done, we'll make a start on a few other things. Right then, the first of these is a little basket, and for these we'll first need to cut out one of the fruit or vegetable textures, and we'll glue that to a piece of thin foam core. I've used some that's 3mm thick in this instance. Then we can cut out a suitably sized piece, and for my own baskets I'm going with 1/4 inch by 3/8. And for the basket itself, we'll first score along this line here before cutting the texture to size. And in this example, I'll be using a piece that's roughly 2.5 inches long, which I'll then fold along the scored line. Next, we'll need to trim this so that it's roughly double the height of the foam core, so around 6mm in my case. Then we can apply some glue to the back, fold the texture in half, and then apply some glue to the bottom half of one of the printed sides. Now, this next part can be a bit tricky, but we're going to wrap the texture around the foam core piece. And I'll just make sure that the top half is stuck together, And there you go. We're aiming for this kind of thing. Next, we'll do a similar thing for the handle. So score a line down the centre before cutting it to size. And here's a strip that's roughly 1 inch in length. Then, like before, we'll apply some glue to the back and fold it in half. And while it's still wet, we'll wrap it around a straw or similar so that it dries with a bit of a curve. And here's one that's already dry. Okay, so I'll just square up one of the ends, and to glue this into place, I find that it's easier to use a spot of superglue. So I'll just drag the very end of the handle over the glue, and then hold it in place on the edge of the basket until it dries. And there you go. Now I'm just going to trim the other end of the handle to a suitable length, and do the exact same thing again. So there's the finished basket, and if you like, you could probably make these in a whole range of different sizes. Okay, next we're going to make a broom. So we'll need to cut out this texture, glue that around a toothpick, and cut it to size. Then we'll take this texture and apply some glue to the reverse side, and then fold that in half so that the dark lines are running along one edge, like this. And before the glue dries, we'll wrap that around another toothpick, again, just to give it a bit of a curve. So there we go, and here's one that's already dry. Okay, next we're just going to tidy up the ends of this little piece and get rid of any of the white paper that might be showing. And then we're going to make lots of little cuts from the bottom of the piece up to the dark lines that I mentioned previously, as these will form the bristles or the brush part of the broom itself. So that's what you can see me doing here. Something like that. Then we'll apply some glue to the top half of the inside curve and wrap that around the similar texture that's printed on the toothpick. And that's pretty much it. There's a nice little broom to help keep our cottages nice and tidy. Right then, the last thing we're going to have a go at making is a little lamp. So the first thing we'll do is cut out a 2-inch section of the lantern texture, glue that around a drinking straw, and cut it to size. Then we'll take a piece of the black texture that's been glued upon either side of some thin cardboard, and using a regular hole punch, we'll punch out a couple of small circles. Then it's just a simple matter of hot gluing the circles to the top and bottom of the straw, just like you've seen in lots of the other videos. Next, we'll take a piece of the wood texture from the Cottage Walls PDF, wrap that around a toothpick, and cut that to a length of around 5/16 of an inch, which is about 8mm. Then we'll take a thin strip of the black texture that's around 2 inches long, and using the trusty glue stick, we'll apply some glue to the back, and wrap that around the middle of the piece that we've just made. And here I am doing just that. So this is the kind of thing that we're aiming for. Then, using a spot of superglue again, as this might get a bit messy with hot glue, we'll dab part of the black ring into the glue and stick that to the top of the lantern. So something like this, and the toothpick, it's meant to represent a small post where you might hang the lamp. For example, you could stick it to the inside of a building like this, or, if you prefer, you could stick it to the outside of a barn. I think either option works fine. But for this example, I'll stick it inside, so I'll just use a spot of superglue again, and there you go. You might argue that a lot of these bits and pieces are a bit unnecessary for tabletop gaming, and you might be right, but if you do want to add a few more details to some of your cottages, taverns, inns, and that kind of thing, then at least now we have the option. But yeah, that's it for this one. I actually quite like the look of some of these, and it should make things a lot more interesting for the next challenge that I've got planned. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please do let me know what you think of these down in the comments. I do read every single comment, but as I say, that's it for now, so thanks again, and I'll see you next time.